It's funny how these self-proclaimed street kings believe raw aggression can outmatch real training and discipline. But what happens when these so-called fighters step up to actual pros, trained, tactical, and terrifying? Well, safe to say reality hits harder than any punch they've ever thrown. So, buckle up, because we are breaking down moments when street fighters learned the brutal difference between fighting wild and fighting smart. Now let's get into it. Kimbo Slice vs. Sean Gannon. Kimbo Slice rose to fame in the mid-2000s because of his grainy backyard brawl videos that went viral and made him the internet's most famous street fighter of the time. Those early clips built Kimbo's rep as a raw, brutal brawler who fought barnacle in unsanctioned fights. However, Kimbo's undocumented backyard loss is the most important counterpoint to the myth that aggression means unbeatable. The loss came in an unsanctioned encounter with Sean the Cannon Gannon, a Boston police officer who also had MMA training. Apparently, Gannon was not just a cop, he had trained in legitimate grappling and combative skills, the exact skill set that can shut down a sloppy street puncher. In 2004, videos circulated showing Kimbo being taken down and controlled, which undermined the mystique that his backyard wins created. The Gannon fight mattered because it was an early public demonstration that structured fighting training often outclasses raw intimidation and brawling. After the incident, Kimbo shifted from backyard fights to formal training and eventually transitioned into regulated MMA, a path that many attribute to being motivated by that loss. Sean Gannon later became something of a legend in MMA for beating Kimbo, and articles remembering him after his passing repeatedly highlighted how that night exposed the gap between the two. Roger Huerta, a former lightweight star who fought in the UFC, has been involved in at least one widely circulated street altercation video, where he intervenes after a man allegedly assaulted a woman. Many outlets, like TMZ, obtained footage from an incident in Austin that shows Huerta confronting and ultimately knocking out a large aggressor after the aggressor had allegedly punched a woman. That it looked like a live-action example of a trained fighter using a restrained approach in a closing sequence to neutralize a threat quickly. News reports at the time described the footage as bloody and said Huerta's intervention left the suspect unconscious on the pavement. Now it is debated whether his actions should be applauded or viewed warily, because cameras can hide context and escalated dynamics, and Huerta was stepping into an ongoing assault, not starting the violence. So that is a crucial ethical and legal distinction. But it is safe to say that this moment functions both as a heroic intervention and as evidence that the technique quickly decides real confrontations. Phoenix Jones beef for Marvel heroes blew up on TikTok.
Stating that this is ridiculous. Mutual contact combat does seem to be an option right now.
I could buy the same $20 costume you got and put a fucking cam on my stomach. Look, if he wants to fight, I agree with you.
Seattle already had its own real-life superhero. Phoenix Jones, also known as Benjamin Fedor, is a trained MMA fighter who literally patrolled the streets wearing a bulletproof vest and a gold and black suit. And Jones wasn't just cosplaying, he was a legitimate mixed martial artist who fought in a World Series of Fighting event in regional circuits. He started patrolling Seattle around 2010, inspired after his car was broken into and nobody came to his aid. So, he decided to do something wild. He combined MMA training with crime fighting and filmed his street encounters for proof. Videos started popping up of Phoenix Jones breaking up street fights and subduing aggressive drunks using legit jiu-jitsu takedowns and boxing combos. Local news called him a masked vigilante, but he got arrested in 2011 after intervening in a street brawl and accidentally pepper spraying a few bystanders, proving that even superheroes can get cuffed. But what makes Phoenix Jones stand out is that he actually utilized professional fighting skills, not just street chaos. Even Joe Rogan mentioned him on podcasts as the real world Batman with MMA training. Joe Schilling. Some people really think calling out a UFC fighter at a bar is a good idea. Spoiler alert, it never is. One of the most replayed incidents happened in Las Vegas when a drunk guy challenged UFC veteran Joe Schilling at a bar. Security footage showed the man trying to block Schilling's path and flinching towards him. Seconds later, Schilling dropped him cold with a clean 1-2 combo. The knockout went viral on social media, prompting MMA news sites like MMA Fighting and ESPN to confirm that the clip was real and had been reviewed by local authorities. Schilling later said he acted in self-defense, explaining that fighters are not superhumans. They just react faster and hit way harder because of years of training. John Koppenhaver, before he became infamous for all the wrong reasons. John Koppenhaver, also known by his fight name War Machine. This dude had a habit of picking real fights with civilians who had no clue they were dealing with trained professionals. It was a tragedy of wasted talent because his inability to control, leading to a life sentence in prison. Even Joe Rogan and other MMA analysts have since reflected that War Machine proved skill without discipline is dangerous. Bus Rutten. Before Bus Rutten became a UFC Hall of Famer, he made his name in a much rougher arena. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Rutten worked as a bouncer in Holland, where he was involved in over 100 street fights, according to his own words on the Joe Rogan Experience. As he explained in one of his most replayed clips, "You hit them once in the liver, and they make a funny face. Then they go down like a bag of potatoes." In one infamous incident, a drunk group challenged him outside a group when one of them swung first. Rutten responded with a single body shot that instantly folded the man, ending the fight in seconds. He has publicly admitted that his days of crazy bar fights taught him timing, composure, and discipline traits that later helped him dominate Pancrase in the UFC. Sergio Hernandez Jr., a man, attempted to break into the backyard of a house in San Diego, only to find out that the homeowner's son, Sergio Hernandez Jr., is a trained MMA fighter. Hernandez says he arrived at his father's home on Monday and noticed signs of forced entry, an open window screen, and a stranger on the property. He then gave chase down an alley and caught up to the suspect, despite the burglar allegedly being heavier and in motion, executing a judo-style throw to bring the intruder to the ground. Hernandez locked him in a triangle choke using his legs and held him there until the police arrived. At the time, he had been practicing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for about 13 years. That gave him the confidence and composure to act instead of panic. Even though the suspect reportedly weighed 50 pounds, it didn't matter once the technique kicked in. Delayal, one waving a plastic chair and the other taunting him with threats. But he didn't overreact. He recognized the danger, maintained his composure, and let the training take over. Then, when the bullies got too close, Leal delivered a crisp head kick that knocked him down, followed by a check hook to sail the tail. Poliana Viana, pro MMA fighter Poliana Viana, was walking through Belém, Brazil, when a man approached her aggressively, demanding her phone and flashing what looked like a firearm. The accomplice had already knocked her phone from her grasp, and the duo assumed they had found an easy target, a lone woman with no visible protection. But Viana was no average victim. As a trained fighter who had invested serious hours in jiu-jitsu and MMA preparation, she remained calm. Once she realized the gun looked fake, she bent a bit and landed 2 sharp punches and a clean kick, dropping her would-be robber on the pavement and locking him in a rear naked choke until he tapped the ground for mercy. Melvin Gillard. Former UFC fighter Melvin Gillard was working as a part-time bouncer at the gin mill in Denver when things went sideways. On the 15th of June 2018, a patron walked up to the bar entrance and got into a confrontation with Gill. While he was working security, video footage circulated that showed Gillard pushing the man with one arm and then landing a clean punch to the jaw that knocked him unconscious right on the sidewalk. The single punch reportedly broke the man's orbital bone in 2 places. Months later, on the 3rd of September 2018, Gillard was involved in another club altercation at Bar Standard, where he allegedly knocked out another man after a brawl erupted around 2 a.m. Eventually, Gillard pled guilty to assault in the 2nd degree for the bouncer incident and assault in the 3rd degree for the club altercation. He avoided additional prison time and received probation. Chris Curtis. UFC middleweight Chris Curtis, also known as the Action Man, he found himself inside his gym when an unknown man walked in claiming he had a 200-0 record in straight. The intruder allegedly hit one of the coaches and repeatedly bragged about f***ing a lot of guys up. According to Curtis' teammate Sean Strickland, Curtis gave the guy a chance inside a cage-type sparring environment to show what he meant. And can you guess the result? The 200-0 straight fighter got absolutely dominated. Curtis landed clean head kicks and controlled the pace, while other guys struggled even to respond. After the session, the self-proclaimed king of the street claimed he would have knocked out Curtis if it were a real fight. But Curtis didn't stay quiet. He clearly told him that he should leave before he gets ripped in half. Zane Frazier. Many of you might not know this, but before the bright lights of the octagon, Zane Frazier was living the real street life in Los Angeles. Frazier claims that at a martial arts expo in Los Angeles, he got into a street fight with Frank Dux over unpaid teaching fees and grievances. According to Frazier, Dux owed him money for classes, but when Frazier confronted him, things escalated, fists flew, and the LAPD reportedly had to draw guns and cuff them both. What makes it even crazier is that 2 of the founders of the UFC 1 tournament, Art Davie and Rorian Gracie, were at the event scouting fighters for the early No Holds Barred show. Allegedly, they saw Frazier's street fight and decided that Frazier might be a good fit for UFC, and just like that, one of the first ever UFC roster invites came via a parking lot brawl, not just gym accolades. Alistair Overeem and Valentine Overeem. It all started in 2009 at a Dutch dance club, where Alistair and his older brother, Valentine, were simply trying to use the restroom but didn't have the necessary coins for the toilet attendant. The attendant's refusal triggered intervention by a squad of bouncers who asked the brothers to leave the club. Alistair stepped outside, while Valentine stayed behind, trying to sort things out. That's when one bouncer allegedly struck Valentine in the face with a flashlight. Alistair immediately rushed back in to help his brother, and what followed was pure chaos. Spoiler alert, 5 bouncers ended up hospitalized. Not only did the bouncers get wrecked, but Alistair himself walked away injured. His hand was cut and later infected so badly that he nearly lost it, forcing him to pull out of a title fight. In an exclusive interview, Alistair described it simply. They asked him for coins. The bouncer got aggressive, his brother got hit, and then the rest escalated. Francis Ngannou. Every once in a while, the sidewalk decides to challenge a heavyweight legend, and that's exactly what happened when Francis Ngannou was spotted walking through a public area. A random guy literally tried to test him. The challenger steps in front of Ngannou, tries to block his path, and even touches the former UFC heavyweight champ as if he's eyeing a viral moment. But like one would expect, Ngannou does not leap into chaos. He clearly tried to avoid a scuffle while the challenger warmed up for a fight he shouldn't have been counting on. Fortunately, the UFC champion kept his cool, because if not, the challenger might have ended up in the ER. Uriah Faber. While on holiday in Bali around 2006, MMA legend Uriah Faber was simply trying to enjoy his night out when things took a turn for the worse. Faber was at a club in Kuta, dancing and mingling, when a local guy started acting aggressively towards him. Faber tried to de-escalate the situation, but the dude challenged him to a fight outside, which Faber accepted. He ended up tossing the guy hard onto concrete, reportedly breaking his collarbone in the process, but the fight didn't end there. The full gang jumped in. We're talking about brass knuckles, bottles, and rocks. And suddenly Faber was outnumbered and forced to fight for his life. He elbowed one guy in the face, got chased into a taxi, nearly got dragged out again, and finally escaped to the hospital. Blood-soaked and shaken. It's wild how Faber's strained reflexes and composure allowed him to survive what was no longer a fair fight but a full-on ambush. Conor McGregor. In April 2019, Conor McGregor found himself in a Dublin pub altercation that became more than just a bar spat. Footage showed McGregor offering rounds of his whiskey brand and reacting when a man refused the drink, leading to a sharp left-hand punch. He later publicly acknowledged he was wrong, but the incident was widely covered, and he was fined about £1,000 after pleading guilty to assault. Gabriel Souza Galindo. While on a family trip in Barcelona, MMA fighter Gabriel Souza Galindo spotted a man allegedly stealing a necklace from a tourist. Well, he stepped in. Galindo, a jiu-jitsu black belt and someone with pro MMA credentials, didn't brawl. He neutralized. He locked the thief in a triangle choke, transitioned to a rear naked choke, and waited for cops while keeping control. The thief apparently tried to bite Galindo, but Galindo calmly warned him he would break his arm if he kept testing, all while managing crowd control and waiting for authorities. This was so much more than just the typical street fight chaos. Felipe Colares, former UFC featherweight. Felipe Colares was leaving his gym near Recreio dos Bandeirantes beach in Rio de Janeiro when he witnessed a woman being robbed of her phone. Colares didn't hesitate. His friends and the woman's friends jumped into action when they saw the suspect run away with the phone. The alleged thief was unarmed when Colares later noted that it gave him the confidence to intervene with jiu-jitsu technique rather than just brute force. Colares used takedown and controlled the men on the ground until police arrived while recovering the stolen phone and returning it to the woman. He even posted the footage and statement on his social media, saying that today we have one less robber in the streets. This was a moment where most people would panic, but this pro fighter acted with precision, and the thief got wrecked. At the end of the day, it's not about who's tougher, it's about who trains smarter, because when chaos meets control, control always wins. If you enjoyed watching these street brawlers get humbled, be sure to hit the like button, share your favorite moments from the video in the comments below, and subscribe for more wild moments like these. See you in the next video.